Right, so I was on a night out with my friends the other day, and one of them had tried to follow this podcast and was asking me how it's going, because he tried listening to a few minutes, but he was saying it's over his head. Actually, most of the times it's over my head too, because I'm just trying to kind of learn how to embrace speaking in the moment, thinking on my feet. Most of the times ideas that don't fit anywhere else in my work as a researcher, whether it's going to be the academic aspects or the more practical aspects of it. So I think that gave me some inspiration to think through how this thing is going to work going forward, because I feel like a part of it was always, I felt ashamed that I have to do these while I'm walking or while I'm running, because normally, what's become popular is the sit down podcast that's become slightly corporatized and edited. And I actually don't think that's where the original idea came from for this thing. I think it was just about speaking your mind, and I'm actually enjoying this. So I put in the description that it will not be easy to listen to, because I'm trying to figure out how the microphone game is going to work with me moving about, because I'm actually now on the preparation trail for an ultra. It's on the River Severn, the UK, 45 kilometers. This one is just the preparation for the one I really want to do back in Bulgaria, back home, which is 100 kilometers around the mountain that's connecting my hometown and the capital. So these two I'm doing to raise money for charity for the British Ukraine aid. It helps with obviously the war effort, but it's mainly with medical supplies. It was the first one that I saw on Just Giving. So either look it up on Just Giving if you want to donate, or have a look at my website on adapting.co.uk, adapting with a C, so adapting. I've put the homepage to be about that. I've already raised £110. I never thought that I'd be raising money with my running. I always thought it was something I did on the side to get the sense of freedom and away from the constraints of having to say the proper things, whether it's going to be in a corporate setting or in the scientific sense, because obviously you're trying to speak true things, or things that fit into a corporate structure. So I guess this will now become a thing. So with that in mind, I do have some notes about what I want to talk about, so some of the ideas and missed things that I've had since the last episode. I can actually see the last episode got quite a lot of views compared to the previous ones, because and that makes me feel good. It does make me feel good, because place actualizing is something, it's an idea that I think has legs. I'll need to connect it with the data that I've got from the PhD research, which by now I've managed to get all of the initial round of analysis done from all the participants, and now I'm making those more explicit into little pen portraits, empty maps as we call them in user experience research in the practical realm. But I'm trying to still not be too formal about it, and even though there is a method to that, what I'm trying to showcase is that by selecting sampling around the topic, not necessarily the quantitative way but the qualitative way, I've managed to get actually quite a lot of diversity, and that makes me feel really good. I've got people from all sorts of backgrounds, even though the main criteria obviously was I wanted people that would classify as highly skilled, because that's on the agenda for the British government and many other governments, to try and attract highly skilled individuals to their places, and that happens at the national level, but also cities have started trying to do that, cities and regions. And obviously that meant picking people that have a college degree or higher, university degree or higher, or just about that. In the UK, the kind of formal definition that will probably be featuring somewhere at the beginning of my introduction about why is this research relevant. They have these NVQ levels, or I don't know, national vocational qualifications. I don't know what it is. They formalize it. I was trying to get something that is that, but obviously my thinking started from another theory that got some criticism. Florida's work on the creative class and how people from the creative class are choosing places to live based on the quality of place. This kind of bundle of amenities, as his work calls it. Obviously, it takes a quantitative approach and tries to then analyze the different categories of amenities that the creative class would be interested in. And I've taken a qualitative approach, phenomenological approach, trying to understand the experience and what is that experience really about. So the kind of the aboutness part will feature initially in the first round of analysis. But I'll focus on the harder things, right? So the more hard to dispute aspects, like people's paths to the present, the moment at which I interviewed them, the places where they were born, where they have connections with family, friends, what places do they find attractive, what places would they never consider living in, and then getting into the softer, more higher order, to use some of Maslow's kind of work. What do we call them? I don't want to call them needs, because for some reason I didn't start with that in mind, but that's what I found. So maybe I should. I thought it was about decision making, but what I've done is figured out the motivations before action. So thinking about these experiences, they seem to be not so much about, in the memories, the way that the participants describe them back to me. It's not about the place. It's a lot about, as all the participants said, it's very difficult to split where you were at that moment in time and the place. So, that's why some English metaphors like I'm not in a good place, I'm in my happy place, probably get used. But not to get linguistic about it, because I know that linguistics is where my mind gets really lazy. It's something I keep ranting privately to my wife about, because I maybe don't understand it, but linguistics seems to be the part of the cognitive sciences that I find not enjoyable. Let's be diplomatic, because again, I just avoid it. Really, I don't find it interesting. Doesn't pull me, because philosophy of mind, AI, even research, psychology. These aspects of the cognitive sciences I find interesting. Decision making. This is interesting. Linguistics seems to be trying to take something that people use in the moment in time to express an experience, and then take that too seriously as if you're a robot, and then analyze that rather than thinking about the real experience. And obviously that's not charitable, because the people that would do proper hermeneutic research, and read and try and put themselves in the shoes of someone using certain language, and how could they be a reasonable person when they use things like that? That could be helpful, but it's just, for me, it just reminds me of the literal culture that I see in my daily job when I work with people that try to program things, because that requires that things are explicit. is almost like a given. It's an axiomatic thing, and I think that's where we get in trouble with people that assume that we're going to be able to have an AI replace us entirely. It assumes people have everything explicit in their mind, literal and codified into programs that you call out. But I think that's just obviously inaccurate when you look at the experience that people describe it. You have pockets of experience, you have pockets of awareness, and then the other things we can do without thinking. I mean, like, at the end of the day, we need to do other things, That's why I run sometimes, Other things doesn't require that much thinking, because in a world where we would have to be constantly on cognitively, we would probably be constantly tired, and someone could argue that that's the situation we're in at the moment, especially in the Western world where I live. The experience of everyone diagnosing themselves with different kind of mental disorders, apart from the ones that really are there, it is just a cognitive overload situation, It's probable. One of the things that has always been in the back of my mind, and again, this is where I'm reaching far away from any data that I've got, and I think it's just interesting to think, like, why would evolutionary processes require us to be on and aware? It was probably for self-preservation. Okay, so then to know the self, you need to have a definition of the self. Some sort of working definition is easy to figure out with, around the skin, something that's around me. That sort of, I actually think there are some studies that try to do that. But anyway, beside the factual point, it's interesting to think about that if you're always on, and that was for survival, if you need to be existing in survival mode, should you be cognitively on a requirement? And that doesn't mean that your whole self is not there for the experience, but things like states of flow, intuitions, and then what I'm trying to figure out is, rules of thumb play a part in how I think rules of thumb are different from intuitions, habits, all these things, is that they are codifications of protocols that could derive from scientific thinking, but unless they are really then it's harder to enact them without getting cognitively on. And they would, in certain situations, overperform compared to the fully cognitive, explicit logic, which is where it's probably interesting to talk about some of the recent ideas I've had around what could be fun to do. That I think it's one of those novel ideas, that I think is why I have this podcast for. It's, try out the new stuff, see if it makes sense, if it should just go into the scraps pile. I had this idea that, with the mindfulness practices that I do, and again, I think they are another non-traditionally cognitive, non-axiomatically cognitive way of engaging or being, is, and I've been meditating for maybe, how long? I think it's about 9 years now, maybe 8 years. And so meditation is obviously now getting more mainstream. It's a fresh field for trying out new things, but I don't know, because I haven't looked. So I might be ripping off someone's work, but how can different scientific methods that a scientist applies work with different kinds of meditation? Because by now I've developed an understanding of some of the landscape of the different types of meditation, not just, meditation, mindfulness is, is the basic definitions, but obviously there are different traditions within that. And you would think that probably some of the more quantitative paradigms in science might fit with the more transcendental types of meditation, where a mantra is being repeated. It's kind of, the type of mind that likes the repetition might be the type of mind that likes the transcendental. So working around this area, and this is still fresh, so I'm not sure if I want to almost do the kind of the case study approach, researching this, or think about proper randomized controlled trials where, think about success factors for which kind of thinking the more scientific one or someone meditating would get to certain answers. That would be very interesting, but I think there is many things to think through. This is just, my mind getting too far ahead, but there's something around connecting the dots between the mindfulness practice and the scientific application, the being of the science. So the stuff that I've learned from phenomenology about and design, about kind of how people are, being in the world. How does it feel to do science in the world, right? So I think oftentimes if we live the lid on science, we might lose faith in it, but we should lose faith in it because it's not religion. It should be something that we should unpack and see how it works. More people should know how it works, because if they see, then they wouldn't get so hung up on the existential angst that comes in when you rely on something rigid like, the science says this, and then all of a sudden you figure out, wait, now it doesn't? And it's like, well, yeah, because now we know more stuff, we figured out new things, we use more methods, changed, so we've overwritten the previous knowledge. Then I think that should be a very good thing. And now I'm just gonna go through the notes, because I think some of the other topics are not popping in naturally in my mind, so let me just see. Oh, okay. Well, actually, my notes have some stuff that even for this are too... Well, I guess, fuck it, why not? Yeah, because this passion, let's call it, for linguistics really came to the surface when there was this call for submissions of, what do you call it? Expressions of interest to work with Birmingham on a project that tries to claim back its ties to John Ronald Reuel Tolkien's past, because he grew up there. Of course he didn't write much there, I don't think. It's the usual spiel of, famous person was born here, hence people born here should think that they can do something on themselves and inspire, the best versions of people. And I say this a bit cynically, but I did that with the setting up of the Darwin Festival in Shrewsbury, which never gets mentioned anywhere. They have the toast with the person that set it up. He was a great guy, actually, John. But it used to be 3 lectures before I helped out. As you can tell, I'm not bitter about that at all. But not a British person comes in and does that. It just doesn't fit the narrative at all. But I was there for 5 years, and I did help people organize themselves to do it, and it's pretty good that now it stands on its own. But anyway, putting my ego to the side, the point here is that wasn't actually that wasn't the controversial bit. Controversial bit was I tried to get myself into the mood, and I have a way of getting into that state for working on bids for freelance research work, and I was gonna get through the history of Tolkien, his philosophy. I have that, kind of do the different scientific disciplines and go through it, get different reading, and I got to, understand his philosophy, figuring out he was a Christian, but kind of the good kind of Christian. That wasn't what really did it for me. Then I watched a Christian philosopher explain loads of how his work was almost not a separate world, but a world that's a bit more real than this world. That kind of implies a bit of heaven, but it was interesting to hear how Tolkien described that he just wanted to create languages, and with the languages came, you know, the peoples that used those languages basically came to his mind. So that was very interesting. But then also, this is where I get off the train, because it's just not the language thing that should be the driver of experience. It's the other way around. There's so many things that language can't capture. I've struggled with this my whole life. People, you know, I try to say something, you know, about what I'm going to be doing in the future, and because it's so young, I don't use the proper words, I don't whatever, because it's not been there before. And then it's frustrating to hear back someone evaluating that and just grammatically thinking about what's being said and what's possible based on language, rather than, you don't see me when you're away not putting effort, I'm there running hundreds of kilometers, right? That's the kind of ability I have of action without thinking. So maybe that takes me further, you know, maybe it doesn't require talking, even though I love talking. And well, that was not intended, but because I'm reaching far into talking before thinking, I think that's a good spot for me to recognize that and probably call it an episode. Loving the talking. And I'm almost back to the start, so I've done the first segment of the ultra, just to see how it feels, you know, to get to the point. Sometimes it's important to just know where you're gonna park on the day, things like that. But also, if anyone that's listening is interested, donate. Again, adapting.co.uk with a C, adapting with a C, or Google it on Just Giving with my name, Alex Vladimirov, and then you'll see the 2 ultras that I'm running to raise funds for Ukraine. Alright, thanks.